Serie A and Calcio is back, and so are we with some domestic football. Welcome to the Anglo-Italian pod. As always, my name is Rory. I'm joined by my very good friend Adam, and we have a special guest, Andrea. How are we doing, man? You good?
All good, yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Always a pleasure, mate. Always a pleasure. Adam, how are you doing?
Yeah, certainly a bit more excited than Endrick getting engaged for the very first time as those pictures came out this evening. But yeah, keeping well after a hectic weekend. How was your weekend, more importantly, in Milan, Rory?
It was very good. This is the Serie A show, so I'm not allowed to talk about Arsenal. So I'm going to say Bari finally won a game and beat Mantova 2-0, which leaves them firmly in the bottom half of the table. But hey, a win is a win. So all around, a pretty good weekend. In Serie A, there's plenty of headlines. We're going to be talking about Conte finally, or quickly, maybe getting a tune out of Napoli. They're looking pretty scary at the moment. We'll be talking about what was the next one? I'll let it round this. Atalanta and Fiorentina with a first half shootout that was absolute chaos. Andrea, I'm sure you're looking forward to that one. We'll talk about Venezia getting absolutely destroyed at the San Siro in what was Fonseca's last chance. And we'll spend a little bit of time talking about Genoa and Roma before we look at the European football. And we'll see what else we can squeeze in around in about an hour. So, boys, if you're ready, we're going to take a very quick break and we'll come back with Serie A. And here we are. It's time to discuss all of the football, and we're going to start in Sardinia with Cagliari 0, Napoli 4. And I'm sure you've all seen the photo, guys. It was my absolutely favorite thing. Post kickoff, as the Curva invited the Cagliari squad over to give them a dressing down, the mascot Pulley stood there and took his thrashing alongside the rest of the squad in one of the greatest photos this weekend. I don't know if you've ever seen the account Mascots Minute Silence on Twitter, where they post pictures of mascots during minute silence. It just reminded me of that. This like flamingo with his head slightly bowed as like the ultras go absolutely mental at the squad. It was fantastic. But on the pitch before the game, or during the game, Napoli got a whopping 4 goals. Andrea, they had a disastrous start to the season against Verona, but it looks like Conte is starting to get a consistent tune out of that squad, right?
Yeah, most definitely. I think we couldn't really judge until he started to get the players he wanted. Lukaku came in eventually. David Neres, I think, has looked really exciting on the right-hand side as well. So I think he's got all the kind of players that he wanted to mold into the team he has now. And only way is up for them. They've got no midweek game, and it looks all positive that they can look forward to those weekend games and give it their all. So yeah, they look in a really good position.
It's mad how Lukaku so quickly has clicked in and Conte has instantly got the best out of him. It's some cheat code that he's got, Adam, right? Like, I thought there might be some adjustment for Lukaku, but he's just coming straight away. Adam's still laughing at the mascot.
I'm still laughing about the mascot stuff.
Yeah.
But I did joke about the fact that if you squint, you might see R9 with Romelu Lukaku, because that's what he seems to be doing with him. He just seems to just get the very best out of him. And I think it's helped by the fact that it feels like Napoli are gelling really well right now in terms of the way they're playing the football. They've made it look easy at times against Cagliari. And although they got 3 kind of goals towards the latter part of the match, they really did dominate the game to the point, even David Nicola had to put a tweet out after that game and saying they will try harder. They will be more on the ball for the next match. But, full of credit to Napoli. And I think this is the Napoli side that we are genuinely really tipping to push Inter in terms of that Scudetto race right now. It's going to be a fascinating watch in terms of how they can kind of progress this season, especially with the fact that they don't have any European competitions to entertain this season. So that's going to benefit them. But inevitably, we're just going to have to wait and see if injuries play a part this season. I think that's the key for Napoli. Once they get a few injuries, that could really decide how they kind of approach it. And we know with Conte, he likes to request for more funds in January transfer window. So we'll wait and see, Rory. But promising start. I mean, given the context of they lost against Hellas Verona, we were thinking the worst, or we were thinking that maybe Conte wouldn't be in the job for much longer. he's turned it around and they look together. That was the thing that I saw. And I think the addition of Buongiorno really shores up that defense as well. He looks so solid, and that contribution from the header from the corner late on, beautiful.
Yeah, it's great to see how quickly he's fitting in as well. That back three, I think, like, look, considering it's alongside Rahmani and Di Lorenzo, who nobody would be like really, fighting over to start in their defenses. I think it's incredible that they seem to have got that solidity. Now, that being said, this was against Cagliari, and we'll get onto them as well. So there wasn't much of a threat, although I think early doors, like the Vumbo had a few chances, they had a few shots, but then the second Napoli took the lead, it kind of felt like they just collapsed, really. But what I was excited about was this Kvara-Lukaku link up as well. I feel like they were bouncing off each other really well, and without maybe a lazy comparison, but hey, it won't be the first I've done on this show. I think maybe Lukaku could fill in that Osimhen type role, and maybe Kvara could start bouncing off him, and the way that they did in that Scudetto winning season. Andrea, have you been impressed by how quickly they linked up? Because I think their 1-2 passes, and like especially on the break, was just really impressive, right?
Yeah, no, I'm definitely impressed. I think Lukaku's always been that type of striker, always that likes to play into feet, back behind the goal, stuff like that. So his link-up play at times hasn't been the greatest, but I feel like with a system way of playing, it can work effectively. And I think Napoli have that. We saw that Inter when he was prolific there. There was a great set-up system for him to be able to have his game and also execute in the final third. But yeah, it's really interesting how he's managed to get, even David Neres, I think, is also getting in there as well. So they've got quite a few players coming up from even deep as well to help. But certainly as the focal point, Lukaku looks really strong. And in there, he's a goal scorer, despite everything. He's proven it time and time again that he can score goals. And he's under a manager that really appreciates him. And that I think that says a lot as well, and will help for his confidence going in for the rest of the season as well.
Yeah, I think he's one of the players that is most important to have him mentally, like in the perfect state. Like he needs to be completely concentrated, completely adored, in the right place. Like if anything goes wrong, we've seen what happens, right? Chelsea have seen it twice, I think. But like, I think it's just incredible to see him in the right environment. He does need a partner, like you said, like with Lautaro at Inter, he needs that person around him. I think at Roma, at times he found himself quite isolated, and that was part of the reason why he wasn't able to hit the numbers that he is here. But Adam, that Kvara goal, a bit of a toe poke, a really kind of instinctive little finish. He's having such a good start to the season. Like it really feels like last year he was kind of up and down, like Napoli were mainly down, but he was up and down like Napoli. This year it feels like he's kicking off really positively alongside the team after that Hellas result, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously you could maybe from a different angle think it's fortuitous, but I think he definitely deliberately wants to go in that direction anyway. And yeah, I think he's pushing on in terms of his abilities in this particular season. I think there's a lot of criticism that he didn't maybe push on from the first season that he showed under Spalletti, but certainly, I mean, you can't blame him for the second season because the multitude of different tactics, different philosophies didn't probably suit his game naturally. I've always felt with Kvaratskhelia, one of the ways to get the best out of him is to play him a lot more centrally, to give that kind of optionality with him as well. Because whilst he's being predominantly played as a wingman, so to speak, I think he'll be far more effective down the middle. And you can see the link-up play that he is doing, as you mentioned, with Lukaku. But even prior to this as well, there was kind of that feeling in the sense that he can lead that line as well. So I think, he's really starting off really well. And the fact that he's got Conte on side, Conte believes in him as well. That is the biggest thing for him. I think the key will be for Napoli to keep hold of him because inevitably, I'm sure there'll be links with him. And plus, he's not paid really well. So I think that's Di Laurentiis playing the cheap card there as well. But by all accounts, he has got an improved contract, so that might appease him for the short term. It's just a question whether a bigger club decides to take a gamble on him and maybe sniff his services. But yeah, he's proving what a valuable asset he is, and what a hell of a signing as well. £10 million. It's just nothing these days, is it?
It's incredible. I think you're right about him playing a bit more centrally. It gives him a bit less predictability. Like when he's out wide, it's kind of he just he keeps going outside. Whereas on the left, he can kind of, or more centrally, you can kind of go either way, and it gives the defenders a bit more doubt. So I think, absolutely fantastic from him. And we also, more importantly, headline, we got to see Billy Gilmour and Scott McTominay arrive in Serie A. They both came on in the 74th minute. Obviously, not a lot of time to make an impact on the game.
No.
But I did see a lot of stuff all over Twitter just being like, two Scottish boys running the Napoli midfield. Like, you love to see it. Andrea, we've kind of talked about it a little bit. I'm not sure what role these players will have in the squad and where they'll find themselves. Like, I don't know if either will be a starter. I can see McTominay being kind of an impact player off the bench when they need a goal, when the game's not going their way. How do you see them fitting into that squad? Because that midfield of Anguissa and Lobotka has kind of picks itself for now. Like, how do you see it going?
Yeah, I kind of agree. I the only player I say out the two that's got a chance is actually McTominay. I actually think I feel like he's a Conte-esque player, let's say, and I think he's got all the attributes that midfield to kind of come in and like kind of almost not necessarily match Anguissa in midfield, but kind of if Anguissa was missing, I think McTominay could step in very well. I feel like with Gilmour, it's more of a bit of a Lobotka kind of role, like as cover. But certainly McTominay, I feel like over time, I think Conte's like that sometimes. When he introduces a new player in, he'll like to keep them in if they're doing well and like keep the same player in. So there could be an opportunity but Anguissa at the last game was impressive. So it might take a bit of time for him to get into the first team. But I think once he starts to get more games, we could generally see it. I feel like they spent a lot of money on him. There's still, big reason why he should be in the team at some point. So I definitely think so. Not for now, of course, it's a big adjustment. Serie A, as we know, is completely different to Premier League. The style, the pace of it, everything about it. So it's for McTominay to adjust, but I'm sure he will eventually start getting some first team action.
I hope so. I'm excited to see Gilmour get some starts and because I think Conte could, and in this system, as you said, like the Lobotka replacement, he doesn't give the ball away, Gilmour. He just keeps it moving, and he's really like press resistant, incredibly good football. I'm excited to see him get a few more minutes. So hopefully we see a bit more of them, but it's great to see them make their bows or make their entrances into Serie A. Let's talk a little bit about Cagliari. Obviously, the big man Davide Nicola is in charge. It's not going particularly well. Adam, it was, as I said, I was kind of watching the extended highlights, and I was like, okay, they had a few chances. They were in it a little bit, but they just collapsed completely, right? Like, could you see why the mascots wanted to, the ultras wanted to go mad at the players afterwards?
What you're going to say, the ultras going mad at the mascot then? I think, look, there has to be a sense of reality with Calgary. They overachieved in staying up, really, under Claudio Ranieri last season, I think, to a larger degree. And that was built on that team spirit that they had. This season, they needed to add quality. I don't necessarily feel they've done enough because they got in the likes of Gaetano on a permanent. They got Marion, for example, into that squad, which I think is definitely upgrades on what they had, but certainly up top, that's where they were lacking. Last season they had Patania. I'm not saying he was the goal scoring threat by any stretch of imagination, but they do need someone a bit more agile. They need someone that's going to be willing to run alongside Muvumbu, for example, who is seen as the bigger threat out of the attacking options that they've got. And I think that's the problem that Calgary have, is that they have to work within their means. The means are what they've got right now. Yerry Mina was a solid addition. Unfortunately, you got that deflection for Di Lorenzo's goal, for example. So, this is the problem. I think they just need to build around that core of players that they've got. Davide and Nicola will get the best out of this squad. I think you can arguably say this, you take a hit on this result because unfortunately they're not expected to win. But what they do need to do, and this is something we alluded to in the preview for this season, is they need to make the most of their home form as well as maybe winning a lot more away from home as well. So look, it's not a great day. However, look, I'm sure David and Nicola will make sure that they are drilled for the next match. But yeah, I'd be curious, where do you think Calgary should push on this season? Do you think they can do better than what they achieved last season, or do you think they're going to be hovering really?
I think it's going to be exactly the same kind of season. They'll be fighting for their lives, and it depends how the dice rolls, kind of thing. If you know what I mean, where it lands. I think last season, as you said, like they kind of survived on the last day, right? Or I think it was last day of the season, right?
Last days, yeah.
So I think it's going to be exactly the same kind of season. They've obviously brought in Davide Nicola because of his track record in terms of keeping teams in the league. The only issue that I see looking through their results is they drew 0-0 with Roma, which is more of an indictment on Roma at the moment. But they drew with Cagliari, with Como. They lost to 10-man Lecce, and now they've lost to Napoli. So 2 of those games are against the teams that are probably going to be around them, right? Como and Lecce are going to be the teams that they're battling against. Like, their best result is against Roma, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the issue, and I think that's probably why the Ultras have been like, okay, we need to have a chat, because the last 2 games are eminently winnable. And the next one is Empoli at home, and then they've got Parma away. And then after that, it gets super difficult. Juve away, Torino at home, Udinese away, Bologna at home, like Lazio away, Milan at home. That run of fixtures is horrible.
It's going to be horrible.
So the next 2 games are absolutely massive for Cagliari, because I think if they don't get a win here, they could be looking at 10 games into the season still without a win. So I think it's a really big couple of weeks for Davide Nicola and Cagliari. And I think the performance was obviously, like I said, they just collapsed the second they conceded 1. So I think there needs to be a bit of a stern word about the team spirit more than anything. Because like we've talked about him in the past, there are some decent players there. Marin's a nice player. Lavumbo's good. Gaetano's decent. Like even the goalkeeper isn't that bad, even though he's got 3.6 on form. But the goalkeeper isn't that bad. But yeah, so there is something there, but they just need to turn it around pretty quickly. But for Napoli, fantastic run of form. Another game with 4 goals. Everything is just looking pretty rosy there, and they've got a full week of rest while everybody else has got their European games coming up. So they'll be feeling pretty bloody smug about it. But let's go to the next game. Andrea, you ready? We're going to talk about Atalanta 3, Fiorentina 2. The Ademola Lookman show. God damn, I'm sorry. I had him in Fantacalcio, so I was delighted to see him playing so well. But Andrea, take us through this game. I imagine you watched it. The first half looked great fun. The second half, they'd used up all the goals in the first half, right?
Yeah, funny enough, you mentioned that. I had Retegui in mind because I just knew. I think the first half was pretty much all the action. Second half was just flat, even from both teams, to be honest. I think it was just another disappointing kind of display. I think it's very predictable the way Fiorentina play. I think selection as well. I question a few selections like Cataldi in the middle when you've got a young Richardson who I watched him for 10 minutes on his debut for Fiorentina. I was like, this guy's a player. He should be in the team like every week. He looks really good. I just have questions on players like Cataldi and Gosens. Like, are they really going to be there for long when you've got younger players like Parisi there? Coyote's not even had a look in, which is unbelievable. I still can't get my head around that. But other than that, I think it's too predictable. It's always still seems to be going out wide. I also think without Moise Kean in that team, like I know I'm a big fan of Moise Kean, but generally without him in that team, I really don't know how he would score goals, because I think he's just been so good at like holding up and bringing players into the game and being clinical actually when he's had the chance. But I just think the other issue for Palladino is that there doesn't seem to be a plan B. And what's quite worrying is that I've noticed now for 3 games in a row, I've kept count, that we've had 10 minutes to go, we're chasing a goal, and he's subbed on a centre back for another centre back. Like I don't get that sub. It's the exactly same 80th minute of every game, and he subbed off against Atalanta. He subbed off. I think it was Martinez Cuarto or Ranieri for Pongracic. I'm like, what is that gonna do to chase the lead? Like, I don't get it, and it's frustrating because it's like if you don't have a plan B and the game's going against you, like it's very slim you're going to do something, and I think in the end that's what happened. It was just so flat. It's just you need to you got to stick to your principle. Like, he likes his 3 at the back, fair enough. Like, he's got to back it, but when you're chasing a lead, surely it makes sense to drop one off and maybe bring Beltran on or someone just to go for it. But and then in the end, it's like you keep the same system, same style, and it was always flat. Like, you need to kind of inspire the team, bring someone impactful from the bench, and yeah, but it's happened 3 times in a row. Honestly, if you go back to each game, 80th minute, around that time, I don't get it. It's like,
Yeah, it seems odd. It's one of the rules in football is you don't disrupt your defense unless you absolutely have to, right? You don't sub
Yeah.
a centre back unless you absolutely have to. I think it seems like a very very strange decision, but you are conceding a lot of goals. Like, why is it obviously Milenkovic left in the summer? Like, is it just as simple as you haven't got someone as dominant as he is in the air now, or why do you think it is that you can seem to be quite leaky?
I think the main reason is the quality is not there. I think Pongracic, I had a lot of faith in him. I thought it was a good kind of signing. He's looked awful. Like, to be honest, like, I've got to be honest. He's given away like clumsy fouls, got sent off on his debut, another yellow card. Like, it's just I feel like Palladino's a bit worried playing him because he didn't play against Atalanta as well. So I feel like he might not be in the team. But then when you look at that, like, if you're playing three at the back, you need to make sure that they're all quality, right? You know, it's hard enough to have two quality, let alone three. Like, you look at the Juventus teams back in the day, Bonucci, Barzagli, and Chiellini, like that. You knew that was quality, and that was going to win you games at the three at the back. But when you stretch into players like Komutsu, who's a young player, looks decent, but is nowhere near ready. Ranieri, for me, I've always said this is barely a squad player, but seems to be playing first team football. No, it's for real. Like, this guy's been on loan at Serie B for his whole career, pretty much, but for some reason he's in the defense. But yeah, I just think we're already quite short quality in defense, and you're stretching it to a three, which yeah, you're kind of
Yeah.
stretching very thinly everything, and it just doesn't work. And also Baraghi as the left centre back, he's always been dodgy defensively as it is. As
Yeah,
a
yeah,
left
yeah.
centre back, you not only need to be good on the ball and obviously, of course, contribute going forward. You need to be just as good defensively because you're going to be exposed a lot, especially with the wing back going forward. You need to cover. You need to kind of fit in. Yeah, and I think that disrupts the defense as well. Playing Baragi left centre back because he cannot play that position, but unfortunately left wing back not really either because he hasn't really got the pace to do it. So it's just like he's trying to fit in players that ideally doesn't work. But yeah, a lot of selection issues as well. I'd have to say.
Do you think he's going to get the time to figure this out? Because the start of the season's been pretty terrible, and I feel like patience is kind of running out with him. And obviously, he's got this system that he wants to play. Like you said, he's trying to fit these players into this system. Do you think he'll get the time to figure it out?
I think he will, but I'm kind of worried because I feel like these next games, there could be no wins in Serie A. Honestly, if you look at the next fixtures, Lazio at home is going to be a tough game. Lazio on their day can be they can score goals and we can see them a lot. Empoli away, as we know, Empoli have had some good results. They look good. And then you've got, I think the last game before international break is Milan at home. So they're games that they're not given. You know, we drew to Venezia, Monza at home. So any game right now, anyone can beat us and we could lose any game. So I kind of worry about that. But I just think my only worry is that I've kind of seen this script before with previous managers where you can clearly see Italiano, but what you can clearly see that
We're going to
He's
get
got a
to him.
mask.
Don't
He's
worry.
got
We're
a
going to
mask.
get to him.
I'll enjoy that bit at least. But when you can clearly see that this is never going to work, like I genuinely don't think it's going to work unless he changes certain players, like brings Parisi in, brings Coyote in, drops Baragi from centre back, but he won't do it. So this is my worry, and I just think over time we're going to keep seeing. There's going to be maybe moments where we win games and it papers over the cracks, but deep down I think. Unless he is brave enough to be like, look, we don't suit it, and switches it to the two, I'm very worried for him. I think I'd like to give him time. I really like him. I did want him at the start when we did. I was thinking, that he does play progressive football despite playing three at the back. Um, but yeah, only thing I'd say is that I think what's going to buy him time is that our kind of best player now hasn't even had a kick yet, which is Goodmanson now in the attacking third. So we're going to have to see him come into the team. I also think as well we've signed some kind of promising young centre backs in Moreno and Valentini as well from Bocco. Who looks like a really good one, and he'd be ideal on the left hand side centre back instead of Baragi. So yeah, I think they're going to look at it and think, yeah, but Goodmanson isn't there. Players are missing still. He's going to get
Yeah.
time, but I think the bigger picture is that something drastic has to change. Otherwise, we're going to keep seeing the same problems.
It's not been pretty. It's not been pretty at all. But Adam, let's talk about Atalanta. They made a great comeback in this game. Their front three of Lookman, Retegui, and De Ketelaere, I think it's up there as one of the best front threes in the league, right? It's really like on their day, all of those players can cause you problems. They seem to have really good chemistry. De Ketelaere, since he's moved from Milan, has been fantastic. Lookman, I thought it last season might be a kind of flash in the pan season. He's had his moment, but he started this season really strongly again. A goal and assist for him, a goal for Retegui, and a goal for De Ketelaere, all three delivering the win. It's after a slow start to the season, Fiorentina have given them the boost they needed, right?
Yeah, they did. It was quite fluid in terms of the moves that they actually did for the goals as well. I thought it was quite attractive on the eye, should we say. And like you say, they've got a different dynamic between all three individuals. You've got the kind of Retegui, who's more of a goal poacher. You've got Charles De Ketelaere, who's deceptive with his size. He's very good on his feet. He can create stuff. And Adamela Lookman, who you mentioned, obviously in the summer as well, we've got to provide that context that he was kind of demanding a move. You know, he was wanting to be on the transfer list, but, you know, they didn't get the offer. And he's realized that, you know, he's got to get his head down, work hard, and, you know, he really did look good against Fiorentina. I think it was helped by the likes of Bellanova. He had, in particular, a very good game as well. But yeah, this was the Atalanta side that we knew was waiting to come out and be unearthed a little bit more. They needed time to gel with each other. And I think to that Fiorentina point, potentially there's still a bit more gelling that's needed. I mean, I was looking at the stats, trying to look analytically why, you know, Fiorentina are struggling now. As you know, Andrea's pointed out the flaws of like Fiorentina, but when you look at the stats, they're not terrible. They're kind of mid-table when it comes to a lot of the metrics. But I think the key one is they're not keeping the goal out of the net at the other end. If they'd kept the goal out of the net for most of these matches, then you never know. They could be winning a lot of these matches. But I think a lot of it is predominantly down to Palladino style, because they are, based on like the metrics themselves, they are passing a lot, they're keeping possession, they're rated like 4th, 5th best team even in Serie A in terms of that possession stat. So, you know, XG as well, if you look at just that Atalanta game, they created a lot of opportunities. They're just not getting the ball in the back of the net as well. So I think there's an element that they need to be a bit more clinical in front of goal, but also maybe it's just a system itself, Rory, and maybe to Andrea's point, look, they just need to find something that works for the players rather than Palladino forcing what seems to be like very much a replica of Italiano style of football, where it just didn't work in the end. So, and like Andrea pointed out, actually Moses Kane is having a really good season, by, even though we slate him on this podcast as maybe not being as clinical as we think on the eye, but actually he's been very clinical for Fiorentina. And to Andrea's point, if he wasn't there, don't see many people being able to contribute in terms of that goal threat. So, yeah, Fiorentina just need to work on that strategy, and yeah, they've got to buck up their ideas, as Andrea says. But Atalanta, look, that gives them a bit more confidence going into the midweek game, in particular, Rory, for your beloved Arsenal. So
just in time,
cheers for that'll be, yeah,
just giving them the boost in confidence they need. If you've not seen the Lookman assist for the Retegui goal, oh, what a cross that is. Absolutely delightful. And his goal in itself, Lookman's goal, the composure and calm he showed on the ball was absolutely ridiculous. He really was absolutely balling out. It's lovely to see him confident and scoring. Let's leave that game there. We'll leave you. You can move on from it now, Andrea. We'll let you move on. And we'll go to the earliest game. I think, was it Friday night? When was it? No, it was Saturday night, wasn't it? Milan 4, Venezia 0. Before the game, Ultras unfurled a banner that said, Fonseca, this is your last chance. And, well, the players that he's tried to kick out of the squad have rescued him once again, as Teao scores, assisted by Leao. And Venezia were absolutely atrocious. My camera's just gone. Adam, how bad were Venezia?
I don't know if words can actually describe how terrible they were, but I think to summarize it, it's 28 minutes in, it's 4-0, and I'm messaging to a group to say, what is the biggest scoreline in Serie A history? Because it was that dreadful. It was awful. two poorly given penalties, for example. The defending from, in particular, the corner for Gabbia's goal was atrocious. It wasn't like the most spectacular corner in the world because it was kind of floated into front post. You had so many players in front of it that could have cleared it or just done something more defensively minded. And Gabbia just nicks in, and goalkeeper is all over the place. I mean, it's bad enough he gave away such a poorly given goal for Teo's goal initially within a minute or two. But yeah, I think the question I had as part of my notes is, you say with Di Francesco, how long does he actually last? Because I had my doubts based on last season with Frosinone. I think he was very fortunate to get that role in the first place, given the context of they got rid of Fabio Grosso in what I feel was a very harsh manner from Frosinone point of view. But then you think, right, this guy hasn't had a greatest of managerial history, should we say, and then he comes and gets given this role because Vanoli exits his role and goes to Torino. So you're thinking, okay, what can he do? But he didn't have time, really, in fairness to him, to bring any players in. The financially situation at Venezia is really bad. I think, there could be a call to say this could be the worst Serie A team potentially in Serie A history. We'll see, because I think that's some record. What, Chievo, Verona, I think were potentially the worst.
Chievo, or maybe Como the last time they were in the league. I would have to double check it.
It is getting very close to it, because I think Milan put their foot off the gas in the second half. They made it, just controlled the game, should we say. And it was made worse by the fact that Nicolosi gets sent off for a badly timed challenge as well. I mean, it could have been worse. Second half, I was nodding to sleep because that's how bad the football was, unfortunately. But by that point, Milan had secured the 3 points anyway by the 28th minute. But one positive, Tammy Abraham gets a penalty, scores. I was dreading it. I thought he might miss it, but he did score. And I think that gives Milan confidence going into the next set of games, because I think they needed that ahead of the derby on Sunday even. So that's going to be fascinating, given the context of how Inter got on as well. But yeah, Rory, I mean, do you think this is going to be the much needed kind of boost for Fonseca as well, more importantly?
Yeah, look, I think it's not important. It's not only important that they won, it's important that they won it comfortably as well. I think they had to go out and get a statement win. If they'd have won this 1-0 and scraped it, I think there would have been more problems. But I think they've gone out, they've got the job done in half an hour. They've made it look easy. Leao was showboating within the first 3 minutes. I think everything was very comfortable. So I think it gives them a bit of a okay, we remember how to do this now. We know we can beat teams. We remember how good we are. Just a quick, before this game kicked off, on my Fantacalcio, I bought Scalvini, right? Okay. Obviously injured until the new year. And someone said to me, oh, you can have Venezia's goalkeeper and I'll take Scalvini because I needed a sub goalkeeper. I was like, oh, yeah, cool. Yeah. Okay. Traded it. And then watched that goalkeeping performance and thought, well, that guy is never getting off my bench. I pray I never have to use him because it was atrocious, the whole thing. But anyway, beyond my own personal complaints, I thought Milan were genuinely impressive. I think it was good to see Leao with a bit of a smile on his face. He's still having a very good start to the season. I think he knows that he's going to win this battle against Fonseca. It gives me the vibes of players that don't give a shit about Ten Hag at United. They're like, yeah, all right, whatever. I'm going to be here longer than you will. Don't worry about that. Yeah. And that's why I feel like he's got that confidence of I'm fine. But he is having a very good start to the season. But in Venezia's defense, Andre, I'm going to try to defend them. They've had a pretty tough start to the season. So their games so far, they've played Lazio away, Fiorentina away, Torino at home, and Milan away. Those are the teams that are all, you hope, going to be towards the top half of the table. In their next games, they have Genoa at home, Roma away, Verona at home. There's a few games maybe where you can do a little bit better there. Do you think it has just been the worst, the most difficult start, or is this a team that's really doomed?
I think you can say that, but at the same time, what kind of worries me is that in every game, there's nothing about them that looks like they can do something or kind of worry a team. Even the draw they got against Fiorentina, which I still to this day pisses me off because they're so terrible. They're so terrible, honestly. They're awful. But they didn't do anything, and they still managed to get a point. But regardless of that, the point is they just it's like you always see in a team that are kind of trying to stay up. They've got a way of playing. They'll pull out wide or cross it in the box. They'll kind of take long free kicks, whatever. It just seems like it's quite stale, especially
Mm,
building from the middle into the final third, let alone the final third.
Mhm.
And I just think it's quite worrying that in these 4 games we really have not seen any kind of impetus in anything like midfield and the final third. Regardless who you're playing, you should be able to at least create some chances. I
Yeah,
feel,
yeah.
even if you're chasing a game or if you're against a heavy favourite. And I think that's what worries me, because at least other teams that have, like, you look at Como now, that they've actually put goals in, they've actually worked, they've got a system of scoring. But yeah, I worry for them really, and I agree. I think it could be a question of how many points are they really going to get,
Mhm.
and if they're going to
mm,
take over that record. I hope they kind of turn it around a bit, but as it stands, yeah, it doesn't look good.
mm.
Well, they scored 3 minutes into the season and they haven't scored since. So we're going to continue to count how many minutes it takes them to score their next goal. But I hesitate to guess
Yeah.
it might be a while. But let's move to the last game we're going to focus on properly before we do a quick roundup. And let's talk about Genoa 1, Roma 1. Not the most exciting game, but Dovbyk scored, positive for Roma. He got his
Mhm.
first goal. He thought he was offside, but it turns out he wasn't. It did count. He got his first goal. And Devinter in the
Definitely, yeah.
96th minute, although it said 4 minutes added time, and then it was like the 98th minute when he scored. I'm not sure what happened there, but he got a late equalizer. But my takeaway from this was, how the hell did Roma not win this game?
Mm,
They should have scored so many more goals. Obviously, the goalkeeper of Genoa had a very, very good game.
yeah.
But Roma in general are having a bit of an issue figuring out this attack. Now, Andrea, me and Adam have talked about it a few times. Look, they've finally got a goal out of Dovbyk, but how are you seeing their attack? Because they don't seem to be able to figure out what the plan is exactly yet. Like, how do you see it?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's there isn't a clear kind of play, whether it's through the middle, out wide, whatever. I feel like it's um, I don't know if it's perhaps Dovic up front on his own might like the system of that. Maybe they need someone closer to him. I don't know, but I feel like they seem quite lost, and they don't. They really. Um, I mean, they do create chances, but it doesn't seem like it's kind of like in their own way of style of play. It's more just yeah, on the day it's happening, and I feel like I'm not saying De Rossi's not setting them up correctly or anything. I just think um, it might take time, but at the same time, I still feel like a lot of this impacts from uh, midfield defense as well. Because I think I've said this before. That hasn't changed and much, and I think for me, kind of can overall impact in the final third as well. I think overall they look quite vulnerable, and yeah, I think there's a bigger problem that eventually we're going to see throughout the season, and we've already kind of seen it anyway. But certainly in the final third, I don't know if they're missing just another kind of player. I guess
Mhm.
Diabala staying might eventually start to bring them some hope in the future games. But I think for now it could be just that, yeah, they're just kind of not getting it right at the moment.
It's
Mm.
been a very, very slow start. They're still without a win. Adam, is there a reason to be alarmed? Or we know De Rossi, like, I don't know. We all love him from his playing days. He's got great PR. We know he's going to be in the job, right? But it is a bit alarming, right?
It is, but what I would say as a positive spin on the whole situation is that he must have clearly been inspired by the international break. He adopted the Spalletti style of football in terms of formation for Roma in this particular match, which from the eye it looks like a 3-5-1-1 formation, but it can be adaptable. So you've got like a free, and it looks like at times you had Brian Cristante being that kind of holding midfielder to allow the likes of Ndika, Mancini to have an outlet at times, which probably did help with the flow perspective. But I think it all goes down to the old age of what we've been discussing for a few episodes now, which is very much reliant on the wing backs being the kind of creative outlet for them. We did speak about how Dovbyk is kind of isolated up top, and whilst we do recognise he had a better game in this particular match, I still think the kind of reliance is very much firmly on those kind of wing back positions. The fact that they tried to get rid of Nikola Zalewski just before the Turkish window closed, and the bizarre sort of circumstances that he didn't want to move, he didn't want to leave because he still feels that he has a role. Interestingly, De Rossi's being quoted as that he sees this as being a club versus player situation because he wants him firmly in the squad. And now he's been omitted from the match day kind of squads as well. So it's interesting because I've just seen on FootMob, they've got him down as being injured, which last time I saw for Poland, he wasn't injured for those games in particular. But yeah, it's fascinating how the politics have happened because I think the move was reported to be in around sort of 20 to 50 million euros, which I assume that would have been used for PSR purposes more than anything. But, Zalewski has an interesting scenario where his contract is due to end at the end of this season. So he could be a bargain for someone if he decides not to sign a contract as well. But it's a strange situation that you've got someone like a coach like De Rossi who firmly believes in a player like Zalewski, but clearly has been influenced by above. So maybe that's playing a huge part in terms of how Roma are setting up right now. And potentially, you have to look at maybe the ownership and why maybe they're struggling right now. But look, I think overall, De Rossi is trying to address it. You could see those signs to suggest that he's trying to impact the way that they're playing. He's realized maybe the system that they tried to adopt in those early games weren't working. They lost to Empoli at home, which was incredible. And, against Calgary, as we already called out, it was a 0-0 draw. But on that day, it could have gone the way of Calgary that day. Calgary could have easily won that match. So I think, look, De Rossi has addressed the key things. And to add to it, Mario Hermoso and Mats Hummels have been brought in. So it'll be time for them to adapt. I think Hummels will be a fascinating addition to the squad. But that clearly identifies that they're going for a three-man defence. That is the way they're going to set out. So it is going to be very much maybe January transfer window that they kind of seek out maybe wing-back positions.
Yeah, it's crazy that Zalewski story because he's one of the most exciting players at Roma, I think, in terms of the potential, and like he's been relatively consistent for them, I think. So it's a strange one there. But let's very quickly go through the rest of the results before we talk about the European football. Inter dropping points to Monza in a 1-1 draw. Monza taking the lead, but Inter managing to rescue a point there. Not quite the performance we expect to see from the Nerazzurri. Elsewhere, what did we have? That's the last round of fixtures. Juve drew 0-0 with Empoli. I'm on the wrong round of fixtures. Yes, they did. Adam, take us through Empoli's incredible start to the season while I figure out this.
I did call out Roberto De Versa having a great impact with Empoli. And with this result, although it was 0-0, a lot of heroics from Denis Vasquez, the Colombian goalkeeper. A lot of question marks about Dusan Vlahovic, and in particular, his clinicalness in front of goal. I think it's not just aimed at him. What I would call out as well, and I'd maybe get the thoughts of Andrea on here as well, Motta changed around personnel, and I didn't quite understand his thinking there. In particular, like, for example, swapped up Matteo Perin in place of Di Gregorio. Why do you need to rest a goalkeeper? That sounds very much like last season when Max Allegri did the same when he rested Szczesny for Perin as well. And don't get me wrong, Perin's a very good goalkeeper, but why would you do it for a league fixture? It doesn't make much sense to me. Andrea, get your thoughts on Juve. Why do you think they're struggling in front of goal?
I think I agree with that as well. I thought that was very odd. There are some personnel changes he does that I don't agree. I think a lot of it comes down to Vlahovic. I'm not going to lie. I think they were better off keeping Moise Kean, but there we go. I just had to put that in there. I think
why not?
I think again, it's just seems to be he's always had this issue where he's never been clinical. He's always been that striker that misses 2 or 3 and gets the 4th. And I think the way they can set up at times, they need to be clinical in certain aspects of games, because I think what's obviously different to when Allegri's there is that it was so importance on defense and being like hard to beat.
Hardworking.
Whereas with Motta, obviously, it's more about kind of this free flowing football, also trying to be as effective up front in defense, but not putting the kind of like importance on the defense. And I think Juve were so used to that. And I think that transition's obviously going to take time as well. Because I've always thought in these games, like when they're going to be against teams that are really going to stretch them and push them out wide, and I kind of fear for them in terms of conceding goals and potentially losing games. But in the final third, I think Vlahovic can seem a bit isolated at times as well. So I do kind of feel for him. But again, I just think it's similar to Lukaku, and I've always said this about Vlahovic because at Fiorentina, still unbelievably was his best season. Like the year before he left, it's still been his best season, which is unbelievable to say when he's been at Juve for like 3 years now, 2 3 years. But I think it's just you need to kind of play to his kind of style of football. It's like Lukaku. These type of players, they're effective, but only if you play and systemize to their way. And unfortunately, Juve's way of playing doesn't do that. Motta's obviously got a great idea and it's worked with Bologna. I just fear for Vlahovic that it might not. It might be inconsistent again this season, and it kind of raises the question for him as well because it's like another a third season in, and it raises concerns because Juve have to obviously they need to execute these chances. They need to, have a system where they're scoring goals up front. So I kind of fear that, but I do feel like if they swap Vlahovic out for someone that kind of fit the system more, I reckon it'd look a lot better, which is quite controversial to say because Vlahovic on his day is a top scorer. But I just think they don't play to a system. He's isolated. I also think the midfield as well. I wasn't really convinced with Douglas Luiz. I don't really rate him as a big player in that midfield. But certainly, there's too many changes and kind of like keeping players that maybe perhaps should be switched out. So there's a lot of question marks. I don't know if again it's still early for him. He's just trying to test out all his players, but the league doesn't stop. You've got to get the results. They've got to. You've got to. And I think that's what you look at managers like Conte, even Allegri. At the end of the day, they go for what's best, and they want to win, and it's kind of strict on that. And I think, you can't get too carried away with changing up too much because it really can affect in the long term. So, I think there's quite a few issues.
Well, it'll be interesting to see because I don't know how much patience Juventus will have with Vlahovic if he does have a third average season. They need that guy who's going to deliver them that Champions League, right? They need the guy who's going to get them there. So I think a third average season and it might be for sale. But incredible start by Empoli to the season, pulling off some massive results. Adam, at the beginning of the season, we said Zanetti was the least exciting manager's appointment in the summer, and he's absolutely killing it, Empoli. So we are bang on as always.
Diversa.
Oh, God damn it! Where's Zanetti?
I don't know. He used to be there, but he's at Hellas.
Oh, he's at Verona now. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I will never be able to get the
You always get lost with managers.
It was too busy this year. It was too full. Torino, moving on. Torino drew 0-0 with Lecce. That's staying in. And in Monday night, Parma 2, Udinese 3. Unbelievable scenes. Well, not night, afternoon, Adam.
It's our favourite kickoff time, right? Everyone tunes in on a Monday evening at 5:30. What a great game it seems. Unfortunately, we've not been able to see the highlights at the very least. 2-0 down, and you're thinking the worst for Udinese. Udinese claw it back to 2-2. Then Parma have one man sent off, and then they get the winner. Florian Thauvin, what a man, what a legend. And more importantly, that puts Udinese top of the table. And I know we kind of had them as a surprise package, but I didn't have this as my bingo card in extra edition. Like, I didn't see Costa Runjic being able to achieve this, but what a phenomenal season. And also, plaudits to Parma because they're a fun side, aren't they? I mean, it's never boring down there. It's so much
2 red cards in 2 games, right? They're absolutely flying into it. But Florian Thauvin, that is already, I was looking at his stats for this season. So he's already got 4 goals and 3 assists in Serie A and the Coppa Italia this season. Last season, he got 6 goals and 5 assists across the whole season. So he's already nearly hit his total. Absolutely flying start for him. A player that we were very excited when he came into the league. It didn't really work out for him last year. So it'd be really good to see him banging big numbers. Udinese, do not let us down, boys. Top of the table. Bang on now, guys. It's going to be Leicester-esque. Bang on now. 5,000 to 1. Let's do it. Guys, we're going to leave Serie A there for now. And we're going to take a very quick break. And when we come back, we're going to look at all of the fixtures that involve Italian teams in Europe. It's going to get confusing. You thought I got confused about the managers? Watch this. We are back, and it's time to finally, we've been avoiding it, Adam. We've got to finally tackle this new European format. I've wanted to avoid it, but you can only avoid your problems for so long. Let's start with the Champions League. I'm just going to read fixtures. They're happening. Yep. Nobody knows how it works. So the Italian teams, Juve will be hosting PSV. Tricky tie there, I think, but you would expect Juve to get the job done. The first of the games that is a repeat of a Champions League final, Milan are hosting Liverpool. So this fine city that I live in is going to be full of Scousers tomorrow, which is going to be delightful. Adam, how do you see Milan, Liverpool? Obviously, Liverpool coming fresh off that disappointing defeat at home to Nottingham Forest. Milan fresh off a morale-boosting win over Venezia. How do you see this game going?
It could be fascinating in the sense that, this is going to be the first test of Arne Slot with this Liverpool squad, as much as it is for Fonseca with Milan. I expect, Liverpool to have the better of the two in terms of the abilities and being able to carve out the opportunities. I think this will be a very interesting match on the whole grand scheme of things. But I predict, Milan will put a threat, Leao alongside the likes of Atami or, for example, Alvaro Morata. It looks, interesting. It's just whether they have that kind of midfield solidity. It was announced earlier today that Benitez is out for 4 months now. So, yeah, it's not looking too pretty on that front. So hopefully they can't afford any more really injury kind of issues going ahead. But, I mean, this could be a really interesting match. I think this will be quite fun, open, expansive at times. And, yeah, I think for the neutral, they'll enjoy it. But I would say I think Liverpool will edge this and potentially nick a win.
I can see Liverpool getting a win there. We've also got my very own Arsenal traveling to Bergamo to take on Atalanta on Thursday night. Really excited about that. But Andrea, I'm going to give you Man City taking on Inter. Obviously, Man City squeezing past Brentford. They squeezing past Brentford. Let's say that. Inter dropping points to Monza. Inter are out for revenge, right? Can they win at the Etihad? Can you see it?
I think it's not crazy to predict that they could. I think if they stick to their game plan, they're hard to beat, and we saw that in the final as well. Inter in the end were actually quite unlucky to lose it. So I think they'll make it hard for City certainly, but I just feel like over time City are just gonna have too much, and they'll find a way. So I just think. The longer they hold on, obviously, the better chance. I mean, that's the cliche saying, but I think in this sense it would be for sure. But I just see City edging it. I just think there'll just be too much pressure in the final third for Inter.
It will be an exciting game. I think it's going to be really tactically very interesting, but I think you're right, City at home, it's a pretty tough ask for Inter. In the Europa League, the Italian teams, we do have Lazio will be traveling to Germany to take on Dinamo Kiev in what is definitely not an easy game. And Roma will be facing the hipsters' favourite, Athletic Bilbao. Adam, which of these two games are you most excited about?
I think I fancy the Roma Atletico Bilbao match. I think that's going to be very interesting to see. Obviously, we know about the hype with Nico Williams, but also Inaki Williams as well. So that's going to be phenomenal to see the two brothers playing together. But also from a Roma perspective, that will be a good test for De Rossi because he did quite well in his first season. Now it's going to be the question of, can he follow it up? Can he maintain that momentum for Roma? So yeah, from that point of view, I think this could be another fun game. I think there'll be goals in this one as well.
Absolutely beautiful. I'm excited for that one. And Andrea, finally in the Conference League, Fiorentina taking on Wales's finest in the New Saints. Although I think they're technically not actually in Wales. But They've won like the last 10 Welsh titles in a row, dominating their domestic league. How do you see this one going?
1-1.
I love it.
Listen. Well, if history's proven it, Puskas they drew at home. Last year we drew to. I can't remember. I think it was RJK they were called, but they were like Albania, and Albanian team. It was their first time in Europe, or it might have been the year before, and we were home. We drew 1-1, draw.
I think they will bite your hand off of that, and I'll be delighted to see
10
that
titles
happen.
is more than us, so we'll.
Well, we will all keep an eye on that game for you. I'm pretty excited about that. We're going to take another very quick break, and we're going to come back with your Serie A fixtures for the weekend, and then we promise we will let you go homeless.
And we are back, and here is your fixtures for game week 5. So we'll start off on Friday at our favourite kickoff time, but on a Friday evening instead. This is 5:30 as we see Cagliari at home to Empoli. This is that must-win game that Rory did allude to earlier. But in the 7:45 kickoff time later that evening, we will see Hellas Verona take on Torino. Meanwhile, we move into Saturday's fixtures. We'll start off at 2 p.m. as Venezia at home to Genoa, hoping to get their first 3 points or maybe a further point to the campaign. Followed up by a 5 p.m. kickoff time where we see a really juicy game here, lads. Juventus at home to Napoli. What a game that could be. And then 7:45, we've got Lecce at home to Parma. Parma, the guys that are really giving us the entertainment in this Serie A season. We move into Sunday then at 11:30 where Andrea's beloved Fiorentina at home to Lazio. So we'll see whether Viola can pull off a result there. We then move into 2 p.m. where Monza host Bologna. Bologna not having a great season. We didn't allude to that, but Vincenzo Italiano having an impact clearly there. Meanwhile, at 5 p.m., we've got Roma at home to Udinese, top of the table Udinese, more importantly, before we see the famous Derby de Madonnina as Inter host Milan at the San Siro. Before on Monday, Rory, unfortunately, no 5:30 kickoff time for us, but it is 7:45 instead as Atalanta host Como, who are hoping to get their 3rd point of the campaign. And that is game week 5 in Serie A.
Beautiful, some massive games there. Conte returning to Juve. You got the Milan derby, narrative everywhere. Absolutely delighted. Well, guys, we're going to leave you now. We're going to let you get on with the rest of your day. Andrea, as always, thank you for coming on. When our listeners and viewers want to find you online, where can they find you?
Yeah, so mainly on TikTok, so at the handle Calciofiore, and and then hopefully starting YouTube as well now. So we'll see in the near future, but mainly on TikTok for now, but more to come.
Beautiful. Adam, anything to say before I let the listener go home?
Just to say, keep on sharing the love. Great to see our YouTube subs increasing. So that was beautiful to see over the weekend. So keep on spreading the love. And more importantly, give us a review. We'd love to get a review. Even if you don't like us, say you don't like us and just give us 5 stars. That would be really appreciated. But Rory, I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah, you can call me a prick. I've been called worse. Just leave 5 stars, honestly. But enjoy the rest of your day. You can, if you're watching, hit the like and subscribe button down here. If you're listening on your podcast app of choice, give us a rating. Call me a prick. And you can find us on Twitter at Italian Anglo Pod, on Instagram and TikTok at Anglo-Italian Pod. And yeah, we will see you next time, guys. Ciao, alla prossima.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.